You might think you know the story of Jimmer Fredette, the sharpshooting kid from upstate New York who took the college basketball world by storm, the National Player of the Year who could hit threes from the parking lot, the NBA prospect with unlimited potential. But there's so much more to Jimmer than just the hype.
For that easy deuce. That was Dower, this is Fredette. How do you like it so far?
There's the work, the struggle, the reinvention. There's the power he had to make an entire nation fall in love with basketball again. This is the untold story of how Jimmer Fredette became a basketball deity on the other side of the world and found redemption after his NBA dreams faded. To understand the Jimmer Mania phenomenon, we have to go back to the beginning, to a little town called Glen Falls in upstate New York. That's where Jimmer Fredette grew up, the youngest of 3 children in a tight-knit family. From a very early age, Jimmer had an unbreakable bond with a round orange friend. His older brother TJ recalled, "He was the most determined, competitive 4-year-old I had ever seen." While other kids were watching cartoons, Jimmer was in the backyard hoisting up shots hour after hour, day after day. His whole family pitched in to foster his love for the game. They built him his own dribbling studio in their basement. He and TJ would play pickup games against grown men at the local prison, where Jimmer first learned to maintain his cool and focus under pressure. As Jimmer got older, his skills sharpened. He'd do dribbling drills wearing blackout goggles. He'd set up furniture as defenders in the living room and practice his signature step back. By the time he got to high school, Jimmer was a scoring machine.
Yes, that's right. Fredette for 3. There it goes.
He finished his career at Glen Falls as the school's all-time leading scorer with 2,404 points. But despite putting up big numbers, the major college programs weren't knocking down his door. You see, Jimmer didn't quite fit the mold. At 6 foot 2 inches, he was undersized for a shooting guard. He wasn't an exceptional athlete who would blow you away with his speed or vertical. But Jimmer had something you couldn't teach: a tireless work ethic, a passion for the game, and an unshakable belief in himself. He ended up at BYU, the same school where his sister Lindsay went. It was there in Provo, Utah, that the Jimmer legend would be born. As a freshman, he earned a spot in the starting lineup and helped lead the Cougars to the Mountain West Conference title. His sophomore year, he upped his scoring average to over 16 points per game and was named first team all-conference. But it was his junior season when people really started to take notice. On December 28, 2009, BYU faced off against the Arizona Wildcats. Jimmer put on an absolute clinic, dropping 49 points and setting a new scoring record for both BYU and the McHale Center.
Play well. And Williams, a freshman guard, had a big game against BYU in Provo last week.
He was pulling up from anywhere and everywhere, leaving defenders looking helpless. That 49-point outburst put Jimmer on the map, but it was just the opening act. His senior year is when things really got crazy. Jimmer didn't just take his game to another level, he launched it into the stratosphere. He started the season by hanging 47 on rival Utah and followed it up a few days later with 39 against UNLV. Suddenly, this kid from Glen Falls was the talk of the basketball world. Every game became must-see TV as fans tuned in to watch the Jimmer Show. He had a flair for the dramatic, a knack for hitting big shots in big moments. He'd casually pull up from 35 feet like it was a layup. He'd slice through double teams and toss in circus shots. By the time March rolled around, Jimmer was averaging almost 29 points per game and had hit 124 threes on the year. But he saved his best for last. In the Mountain West Conference Tournament, Jimmer delivered a performance for the ages. In the semifinals against New Mexico, he exploded for a career-high 52 points, breaking Danny Ainge's 30-year-old BYU scoring record. He poured 33 in the first half alone. It was Picasso with a basketball.
Who wins a rebound fight? And there's Fredette at his best.
Jimmer Mania reached its peak when BYU faced off against San Diego State Over 22,000 people packed the Marriott Center to see Jimmer's last home game. President Obama, when asked about March Madness picks, said of Jimmer, "Unbelievable, best scorer, obviously in the country, great talent." In the NCAA tournament, Jimmer put on his Superman cape again. He dropped 32 points on Wofford and 34 on Gonzaga to carry BYU to the Sweet 16. Alas, their magical run would end there at the hands of the Florida Gators. But Jimmer had left an indelible mark. He finished his senior season averaging a nation-leading 28.9 points per game. You couldn't tell the story of college basketball that year without Jimmer Fredette. Jimmer took his talent to the NBA in 2011, getting drafted 10th overall by the Milwaukee Bucks before being traded to the Sacramento Kings. The Jimmer faithful were out in full force. His jersey sold out in stores. Jimmer Mania had hit the pros. But it quickly became apparent that Jimmer's transition wouldn't be seamless. The NBA game was faster, more physical, and more demanding than college. Jimmer struggled to create separation from quicker, longer defenders. His shot wasn't falling with the same regularity. After a decent rookie season where he averaged 7.6 points per game, his numbers dropped in his sophomore campaign. There were questions about his fit. Was he a point guard or a shooting guard? Could he even defend at an NBA level? The Kings, mired in dysfunction, weren't an ideal situation for a rookie to find his footing. Jimmer's playing time decreased. His confidence wavered. After 2.5 seasons in Sacramento, the Kings parted ways with Jimmer. He had brief stints with the Chicago Bulls and New Orleans Pelicans, but never quite found his niche. The NBA game seemed to be moving away from one-dimensional scorers like Jimmer. The rise of advanced metrics emphasized efficiency over raw points. Still, there were flashes. A 24-point outburst against the Knicks, a few games where his shot was falling and you could see that Jimmer magic, but they were fewer and farther between. By 2016, after 6 NBA seasons, Jimmer was out of the league. But Jimmer Fredette's story doesn't end there. His NBA dreams dashed, Jimmer did what he's always done. He kept working. He took his talents overseas, signing with the Shanghai Sharks of the Chinese Basketball Association. And that's where Jimmer rediscovered his mojo. In China, Jimmer wasn't just good, he was a god. They called him Jimo Dashan, the Lonely Master. He was putting up numbers that were Wilt Chamberlain-esque.
弗雷戴特在变向撤一步，三分球再一个。
In his first season with Shanghai, he averaged 37.6 points per game. The next year, he upped it to 37.4. He had a 75-point game. Yes, 75. Jimmer was the CBA's international MVP. He was an all-star every year. He led the league in scoring 3 times. The Chinese fans adored him. They marveled at his shooting prowess, his ability to take over a game. In Jimmer, they saw a basketball genius. For 3 glorious years, Jimmer ruled Chinese basketball. He was back to being the unstoppable scoring machine we saw at BYU. Sure, the competition wasn't the same as the NBA, but Jimmer was doing things that hadn't been done before, putting up numbers that boggled the mind. There was a brief NBA encore in 2019 when Jimmer signed with the Phoenix Suns, but after only 6 games, he was out of the league once again. He would return to China for 1 more year before the COVID-19 pandemic brought his CBA career to a close. So what do we make of Jimmer Fredette? How good was he really? There's no doubt that he was a phenomenal college player, one of the most electric scorers we've ever seen.
I think you got that with 4 minutes left. Yeah.
His 2011 season at BYU was the stuff of legend, dropping 50 in a conference tournament game, averaging almost 29 a night, leading the nation in scoring. That's rare. But the NBA is a different beast. It's a cutthroat world where only the strongest survive. Maybe Jimmer was a victim of circumstance, drafted into a dysfunctional franchise that didn't know how to use him. Maybe he was a man ahead of his time, a proto-Steph Curry in an era that wasn't quite ready for his long-range bombs. Or maybe Jimmer's game, as brilliant as it was at college level, just didn't quite translate to the NBA. he wouldn't be the first collegiate superstar to struggle in the pros. The history of basketball is littered with guys who dominated the NCAA but couldn't find their footing in the NBA. What we do know is this: Jimmer Fredette left an indelible mark on the sport of basketball. For one glorious college season, he had us all believing in miracles. He made us fall in love with the game all over again. The kid from Glen Falls took us on a ride we'll never forget. And when his NBA dreams faded, Jimmer didn't fade away. He reinvented himself in China, becoming a basketball deity in the world's most populous country. He put up numbers that defy belief and captured the hearts of millions of Chinese fans. Maybe Jimmer Fredette wasn't quite what we thought he would be, but he was pretty darn special. He reminded us of the power of hard work, of self-belief, of the pure joy of putting the ball through the hoop. He was a shooting star that burned bright, even if it was only for a moment. Jimmer's legacy is complex, but it's a legacy worth remembering. He was the kid who wowed us, the phenom who took the basketball world by storm. He was the lonely master, the god of Chinese hoops. He was Jimmer Fredette, a name we won't soon forget. But hey, that's just my take. We want to hear from you too. What did you think of Jimmer's story? What moments stood out to you? Leave us a comment below and let's keep this conversation going. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're always breaking down the biggest stories and trends in the NBA, and you won't want to miss our future videos. And hey, while you're at it, smash that bell icon too. That way you'll be notified as soon as we drop new content. Trust me, with how quickly things change in the NBA, you'll want to stay up to date.